and the support of my wife.
I say that support is amazing. You don't. I mean, it's not.
It is not to be
taken for
minimized
granted or
at
overlooked.
all.
Yeah,
It is.
It's rare.
It's amazing. So at that point, I enrolled in the school, and it's 5 months and 50 hours a week for 5 months.
A lot of work.
So it's intense, and if you already kind of have an idea how to make things, then you can do really, really well. If you have no clue, you can do well too, but you really have to just be attentive to, this is the process we're trying to teach you. Repeat that. Oh, I did it wrong. Why did I do it wrong? Oh, I did this wrong. Okay, sweet. And then, be thoughtful and mindful about your work. And then it takes hand skills to do that. It's just like learning an instrument. You don't just pick up a guitar and just be like, oh, I can just totally play.
Yeah.
It takes the clunking through a few songs that you're just like, wow, that I really suck. You gotta suck a little bit before you're gonna be any
This
good.
is true. I've been playing for 20 years, and I finally started getting comfortable with trying out a solo every once in a while.
You go.
It's
Yeah. So went to the school, did my 5 months and that kind of stuff, and that was almost exactly 5 years ago now. And then because my wife had a space in the Bragg's Pie Factory building, we built a little wall in between to differentiate the spaces so that I could have a workshop space. And I have about 350, 400 square feet in her space that opens up to the way that the pie factory, there's a couple of, some of the spaces have these real big loading doors essentially. And you roll up the loading door and there's my shop. And gotcha. And just basically started working on, because I'm also a player in kind of the scene that is Phoenix.
Sure.
And as you well know, the Phoenix scene is a bit incestuous.
Oh, yeah.
It's like there's only so many people. And like when some people leave and go to LA, then somebody else kind of fills in those spots.
Right.
And then we just mix it around every once in a while.
Yeah. I mean, it's not a big enough scene not to do that. Yeah.
And I love it. I mean,
it's great.
It's also very... I like that it's diverse, and there's a lot of support for each other. It's not like to try and make my band, well, my band is the bestest band and blah blah blah. It's instead of trying to say we're the best, it's like, hey, I do really well at this. Isn't this amazing? And everybody's like, wow, you do really good at doing that one thing. I do this thing too, and it's the rising tide floats all the boats. Hopefully,
right.
So anyway, I went to the school, hung up my shingle in the scene. I'm known as somebody that plays, and then just slowly but surely I've been building a bit of a clientele. And then
that's almost exactly 5 years now too, right? You've had the shop open since 2014.
And then so just recently, and this is very, very recent, I have gone back to working at so the school called me up and they were like, hey, one of the guys that's doing the workshop assistant job is going to be leaving, and we're going to need somebody to at least fill in for that for the next couple months towards the end of this semester. Would you be interested in doing that? And you can still do all of your repairs. Just do it out of have people come by the shop. You just need to be here a certain amount of hours and stuff. And so now I am working at the school as workshop assistant, / instructor.
Nice. And
also doing repairs at the same time. And I just like last week, couple weeks ago, talked to them, and I'm going to be on for the fall semester as well.
Oh,
I'll
that's
be
awesome.
An instructor there as of now, I guess.
Very cool. Congrats.
Yeah, thank you. It's kind of a it's one of those things that, the pay could be better.
Sure.
But the pay could always be better.
Exactly, yeah.
But then it's like, but in doing repairs, it's like, well, how do I pay myself better at doing all these repairs? Well, I just get better at it.
There you go.
Then instead of something that theoretically should take an hour, I can do it in, 15 minutes. If I can do that, then, the job is still worth an hour.
Well, and do you love doing it?
Exactly. And I do. It's great. We just did. I've been working some extra hours because they do some different things. This last, just this weekend, they had they had a setup class that was for anybody and everybody. Like, you didn't have to be enrolled in the school. It's separate from the main curriculum.
Gotcha.
So you come down and bring your acoustic and your electric guitar. You do, they show you, basically run down all the things of what it takes to set up your guitar. You set up your guitar while you're there with instructors there to help you do, work you through it and that kind of stuff. So that, like, I mean, somebody who has, is a bit of a collector and has, 10 guitars. I mean, getting your guitar set up, depending on where you go, I mean, you're looking at minimum about $50, $60.
Mm-hmm.
So to get it done correctly and well, I mean, 10 guitars, that's $600, $500. That's a lot of money, so it's kind of one of those things that, like, knowing how to do it yourself. Plus, then you can experiment, because as yourself being a player, a guitar that's set up certain ways can play certain, it's like, oh, you pick up a guitar and you're like, it makes you want to play a certain way. Well, the setup can be one of the reasons. Plus, I mean, I'm a guitar nerd, so I set my guitars up with, like, and all the guitar nerds out there will know exactly what I'm talking about, and they'll be like, yeah, you're a freak. But like almost all of my electric guitars are set up with flat wound strings, which is not something most people play.
Yeah.
And yet tonally, I'm a very twangy player, which is the opposite of what you would think for flat wounds, but it works for me, And then, like, my acoustic guitars, I use nickel wound strings instead of phosphor bronze, which is another, like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And it's specifically for tonalities that suit the way I want to sound.
Okay.
So when you start becoming the giant nerd that I am, you will be like, oh, yes. And if I use these gauges, and you start, down the rabbit hole you go is really what it is.
I'm always in danger of doing that. It's just, it would be at this point having the time.
Yep. Yeah. And strings, it's a fairly inexpensive way to change things.
Yes,
but like
sure.
Flat wounds are probably at least double, sometimes as much as triple or quadruple what you would pay for just a regular set of electric guitar strings. But because they don't have the windings on them, aren't round, and so they don't make, they're essentially like wrapped in ribbon.
Oh, wow.
Metal
So you
ribbon.
don't get like the sound as like the squeak sound as you run your
you don't get the squeak sound. And because of that, they also, like, you can just wipe them off with some nice, like, mineral oil or whatever or something, and even just wipe them off after you're done with a nice clean cloth, and they last for freaking ever, because they kind of have a weird, slightly dead sound, and they kind of sound like that always. So it's not like regular strings where you're like, oh, they sound super bright. Oh, now they kind of
I'm always
went dead.
deadening my strings. I'm like I've always got my palm against the strings so I can get that kind of
So flat wounds, or when you're talking about acoustics, using nickel wound is a good way to do that. Because those nickel wound strings tend to, in my experience, they tend to sound kind of like a well played in phosphor bronze string. But they kind of sound like that almost from the get-go. And then they stay that way. Nickel is more resistant to corrosion.
Okay.
Martin makes a string called the Monel string. And Monel is just like a trade name for a particular alloy of nickel. And that alloy is was specifically made to resist tarnishing and corrosion. Like you'll see, like It was so you could plate nickel onto that stuff or make things out of that, and then it didn't tarnish. And then if you make strings out of that, oh wait, these strings last a month instead of 2 gigs. And that was, for me, that was kind of a revelation, because playing live, I really wanted that kind of nice twangy sound that I got in my resonator, but like the regular phosphor bronze strings, they didn't pick up on the magnetic pickup as well, because the phosphor bronze doesn't have the same magneticness to it, but nickel has some magnetic properties to it. And then I would play, like, I'd play one sweaty show and pick up the guitar the next day, and it was like I was playing rubber bands that were just like thud, 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 and so I'd swap strings all the time. Went to nickel, I can get a full 10-day tour out of one set of strings and never worry about it. Nice. And the added benefit was that all the wound strings the magnetic pickup worked way better, which was kind of fun because that's I play. I mean, if anybody listening knows how I play, when I'm less of a, like when I play solos, I play stuff that's usually like slide wise. I'll still play up high, and play high, that high twangy, whatever, slidey stuff. But when I play electric guitar, especially, or just generally, I tend to kind of pick out low note stuff, which is that's kind of the opposite of what most guitar players do.
Yeah.
So the other band that I play with is the Blood Feud Family Singers, and in that I play exclusively electric instruments. I don't play an acoustic instrument, so I play electric guitar, and that's
got a very dark country feel to it.
Oh yeah, it's very, man, it's all,
country noir. I like to call
exactly. Yeah, Americana noir is what we do. Like people are like, what do you play? Well, if you're driving across the desert in 1962 in the middle of the night and somebody flags you down, you pull over and pick them up, and then at some point they murder you, the music playing on the radio when you picked them up, that's what we play.
That's fantastic. That's a great description for it.
So it's nice. Daryl, well, I have the advantage and the privilege of playing in two bands that my two favorite songwriters in Phoenix are the songwriters in those bands. Also, Mark Sunman also writes music for the Haymarket Squares, and I love his stuff too. His is a little more verbose and angry.
Yeah.
Whereas Oxborough's is more, what would be a good way to put it? It's more measured in the amount of words that he uses, and it's usually more of a, like, he's using wit to make his point, whereas Sunman is a little more in your face, which works for Haymarket Squares.
It's a good dynamic between the two of them. It works really well.
It works really well. And then in Blood Feud Family Singers, there's a couple of songs that Oxborough's written, and those are his same kind of dry wit, but in a darker vein for sure, because it's a different band. And then Daryl has this very this literary bent to all of what he does, and people are like, well, what's the songs about? Well, they're about love and hate and sex and murder, and how all of that is wonderful and terrible all at the same time.
Yeah,
there you go.
I've gotten to talk to Oxborough a lot because he's done one of my other podcasts a few times, and then I did have Daryl on the show too, and it's those touchstones of Elvis Costello and Tom Waits and stuff like that. So it's definitely that those chops can't help but get mixed in there. So.
Yeah, it's fun stuff. I mean, it's so in Blood Feud Family Singers, I get to play electric guitar because I'm like the lead guitar player. Yeah. Which that always kind of bugs me, that I'm like, people are like, well, what do you do? Well, I'm a lead guitar player. And I'm like, yeah, but
it's got a weird connotation to it, right?
They're like,
Eddie Van Halen, or
so you're a shredder. And I'm like, no, actually, I play lots of more like, I sound a little more like Dwayne Eddy than I sound like Eddie Van Halen.
Sure.
And like my thought process is always be, you play the song. Like the song serves what you do, and you can't just like, I'm gonna do this. Check this out.
Yeah, spotlight me.
Yeah,
those are my favorite. Lead quote. I'm using air quotes on a podcast, but quote unquote lead guitarists are those people that their solos are as much a part of the composition and the melody as they are, time to shine for that instrumental.
Exactly.
That's my favorite lead guitarist is Glenn Tilbrook from Squeeze, and he's his solos are very much part of a contribution to what the overall sound of the song is, as opposed to something that says, look at me.
I always trying to think like I want to maintain some space. I want to always be mindful of what the song needs, and then craft something that fits, but also like use small bits of the actual melody, like the melody of what the singer is singing. Quote that a little bit, and